sorry, we're going to say something.
I didn't realise you'd started, Chris.
I did say good evening.
Good evening, Chris.
I'm sorry, I'm usually told I speak too loudly, so I'll try and speak more clearly. Raynes Park Association is made up of residents' associations and businesses. We've tried to have a broad perspective of the whole of Raynes Park, and we organise the Raynes Park Forum agenda in conjunction with the local councillor, and we invite the local councillor to chair the meeting. So without further ado, I'm pleased that Councillor John Oliver is going to take us through the agenda.
Okay, good evening everyone. My name's, as you just heard, John Oliver. I'm a councillor in West Barnes. West Barnes is also part of this, although you hear the words Raynes Park more often. We're a footnote.
Important footnote.
But enough of my neurosis. Let's get straight on to item 2, which is open forum. I don't think anybody has actually emailed in any issues that they wanted to raise, but there's an opportunity if anyone wants to bring up any points now to do so.
Yes, can I bring up a point?
You may.
Cutting of trees.
Just say who you are.
I'm Jim Walton from Edna Road. I was just chatting to Councillor Victoria. The trees in Edna Road are very low. It's very difficult to walk down the footpath. People have cut the lower branches. Is there a timing when we're going to get the trees cut? They're beautiful trees, but we have to walk in the road to get past some trees.
Right. Well, I'll ask one of your local councillors, Matthew or Victoria, to respond.
Yeah, so we've had, there's been quite a few questions about trees this year. The council have been a bit behind because of still COVID and also still Eunice. And so it has meant they haven't got to all of the trees that were needed this cycle. And so it will mean that some of them will go on at the beginning of the next cycle. If there are any that are actually obstructing the pathways though, we can raise those and get those lower branches cleared. It just means they won't now be pollarded until the new season starts.
When does that start?
That starts in September. But the difference this coming cycle is that they're going to be publishing all tree works on the website for the first time. So actually residents will be able to see, look up their road and see when it's due to be pollarded if it's planned for this next cycle, which will make all the difference, I think, because then it saves you having to come back and forth with us as well. So we did, some of you might see in Prince George's, 3 of the trees were pollarded there, but they didn't quite get finished, unfortunately, because they had to stop, because they stop at for the nesting season. And they'd already run on a little bit longer than usual this year to try and catch up, but they had to finish. So I'm sorry for any of those of you who are expecting it and haven't, but they should be slotted into next cycle when I have the dates published in September.
Okay, impressively detailed response.
I just raise another point in relation to that. Again, Darren Hampton also live on Edna Road. In relation to one of the trees, we had 2 tree branches fall. One of which landed on a car, the other one narrowly missed a young child following the rather large hailstones that fell a couple of weeks ago now. The residents themselves ended up chopping those trees up because we didn't get a response from the council, and that exact same tree, I've looked at it, and I think he's probably getting to the point of being dangerous. And it has been reported by at least 2 residents on the road, and there's been no responses yet. So if someone were to be injured, it would probably look very unfavourably. So I know at least 2 reports have gone in, so it might be an idea. It's the tree outside. I think it's number 65.
Okay, we can get a photo. I don't know if anyone's going to, but we can get another photo this evening and then submit it ourselves as well and just escalate that up. No problem.
Just further to that point, I don't know if everyone was aware, but when we always get the same responses, copy and paste each time, storm units, COVID, etc. But residents are allowed to trim any trees that don't belong to themselves that are overhanging their property. So if you find that street trees are actually starting to overhang your own garden, which we hear a lot, or affecting your phone lines or your window cleaning or whatever, you are able to do that. They've sent me a link about legal responsibilities if you do so. So if anyone wants to do that, drop me a line.
You have to return the branches to the owner as well, don't you?
Well,
as part of
property,
that.
you can throw it back in the council path, and then someone will report it on Fix My Street. But yeah, I mean, just drop me a line, and I'll forward you that link if you do want to do that.
Okay. Yeah, street trees as well. Anybody else?
Street trees, yeah, any tree that doesn't belong to you, it's over your property, you are allowed to actually trim it.
The only other thing that might be quite appropriate to talk about, and it might have already been spoken about quite recently, is in relation to parking in the area. Kingston Road specifically. It may well have been brought up a few days ago at a separate meeting, but certainly it would be good to have an update in relation to the complaint that's been raised against the councillor who failed to properly disclose and interfered with the process of consultation.
Okay, any comments?
And it's none of the councillors in here as far as I'm aware.
I can take that. Are you just referring to the cabinet member involved?
Yeah, it would be good to have an update in relation to
Yeah.
that, and whether or not the consultation will be retaken, or whether or not, or
Let's
what.
not do the whole thing in code.
No. So basically, in Kingston Road, for those that don't know, it's proposed, but it has actually been passed, that there will be, you won't have the ability to park along the stretch where Dundonald Church is on Sunday between I think it's 8:30 and 6 p.m. And so that won't affect the evening service of the church, but will affect the two earlier services of the church. We raised several questions, one of which was about whether that would affect parking in the Apostles. We've been told that there won't be a change to the CPZ in the Apostles unless residents request it, and then we'll go through normal consultation. So to what you refer, there were lawyers got in touch with the council. The council replied from the head of the department to say that they are happy with the decision. The decision will be being implemented, asking for a date, and they said that it is likely to be July, but I don't have any more detail. So there are no plans from the council side to revisit the decision.
Okay, and what about the complaint against the council concerned?
So again, you probably need to speak to that legal team from the church or the council about that, because we're obviously not involved in it.
Go on, Chris.
But,
Yeah, there are two throngs of complaint, one from the Apostles Residents Association and one from the church, because at the meeting with Stephen Allen Bridges, who's the cabinet member for transport, he made an absolute commitment that the parking restrictions would not go ahead. So as chair of the Apostles Residents Association, I made a formal complaint about Councillor Allen Bridges. The church have asked to meet with Stephen, who hasn't responded at all, and they've now sent legal papers challenging the decision. So that's where that's at. I mean, my guess is it'll go ahead, but both the church and our association feel that we were dealt very, very badly by Stephen and Bridges on this matter.
And it's not the first time that, whilst most of us understand that consultation doesn't necessarily equal action, it's not the first time. And I'm thinking specifically in relation to the speed limit change on Bushy Road, which obviously went up from 20 to 30, despite over 80 objections and only 40 persons supporting it. It's not the first time. And admittedly, it is a consultation. It's not a democracy, so to speak. But if you're going to undertake a consultation, it would be good to actually speak to some of the people affected, as opposed to. So needless to say, I know of several roads now within the Apostles that are considering altering parking restrictions as a direct result of some of the activities by the council, most notably around building consents being granted, planning permission, recent building erections and others. And certainly our road will be one of those. I strongly suspect within the next month or so we're going to go out to consultation internally within our road, and we will be seeking certainly an extension during the day for parking restrictions, and we will consider a weekend parking restrictions as well.
Okay, thank you.
So just the final word on that, I did speak to the cabinet member involved about whether he would be replying to any of the emails that had been sent to him, and the decision was basically that it was for the officers to do so, because it was the officers' recommendation, and he signed off on the officers' recommendation based on safety grounds. So you will probably know, we replied to everybody, and that's what we see our role as, which is giving everyone as much of an update as possible, and so therefore the solution is most likely political.
I would just point out that there is a council meeting on the 12th of July. If you wish to ask a question at that meeting, you have until Friday, 5 p.m. to submit it, and you can attend the meeting and ask a supplementary question. Okay. So if you wanted to bring that,
12th of July.
The meeting will be on the 12th of July. But by this Friday, you go to the Merton website. By this Friday, you've got to submit your question, and then you can person or online have a supplementary question on the day. It's not a bad idea for more than one person to do it, because sometimes the supplementary questions don't get answered very well, and then you've got somebody else who can ask it again.
Different question, otherwise they'll get bundled together.
You have to make it like it's slightly. Okay, thank you all very much. That was interesting. Item 3 on the agenda is PC Manning. She's going to make a little presentation about her work, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end of that. PC Manning.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. As mentioned, my name is PC Jessica Manning, and I am now one of the new dedicated ward officers for Raynes Park in our Safe and Neighbourhood team. So I joined the team and the police approximately about 4 months ago, and I've worked very hard on the team since. We work in conjunction with Wimbledon Village and Wimbledon Park as well, and we're based actually out of Wimbledon Park. My first feat, as you might say, I'm sure you're all aware of, is the spate of parcel thefts that we had in Raynes Park, especially along the Apostles. And then shortly after that, I actually held my first ward panel meeting. And it's at these meetings that we, as the police, our residents, and the chair of our panel, we set the priorities that we are going to tackle quarterly, and we reassess these quarterly throughout the year. And that's what we kind of focus on within our team. So I think that within our team we work problem oriented, so we're constantly reassessing what the issues are at hand, and a real key part of that is listening to our residents. And we are the Safe Neighbourhood team. We work directly with the community, so I'm really happy to be here to hear not only what questions you have for me, but also questions for councillors, and just a complete awareness of what's going on in the area. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So, as I mentioned at that first wall panel, we set 3 priorities for our team and the community as a whole. The first priority is a violence driver, which we assigned as youth ASB or youth crime. The second one was motor vehicle crime, so we look at theft of motor vehicles, but also theft from motor vehicles, whether it be an item within the car, number plates, catalytic converters, things like that. And thirdly, the third priority set was burglaries. There is a difference in policing between high volume and high harm crimes, and burglary is an extremely high harm crime, and out of all the victims that I have been to see throughout burglaries, it's really one that affects a lot of people, so that's why we decided to put it as one of our priorities. So just to start off with then, what we've been doing about motor vehicle crime, just as a premise, it does remain low in Raynes Park compared to the other wards that I work with, but also London as a whole. However, we have jumped on if there has been any theft of motor vehicles. I think 2 weeks ago we had 2 in 1 week, relatively close to each other. And kind of our role as a Safe Neighbourhood team with burglaries and theft of motor vehicles, we are not the officers in charge of the case. So, as I said, an exception was the parcel theft cases that I took over and investigated within our team. But we assist in conducting reassurance visits, and also requesting CCTV or witness accounts from other neighbours and things like that. So we did have 2 in a week a couple of weeks ago. That was obviously a bit of a rise, and we jumped on this straight away, and I got in contact with my sergeant Ben Hobbs, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. But he suggested, or I suggested to him, that could we do an operation on this targeted vehicle crime, and I'll talk a bit later about targeted operations. And from that, we've actually now set up that we're going to be joining the traffic team. So obviously there's different teams within policing. We're going to be joining the traffic team within our Safe Neighbourhood team for a couple of late night, overnight shifts, in which it's kind of a low visibility patrol. And obviously with that, I'll be able to hopefully direct to have some patrols around Raynes Park, just to have some proactive patrols in a low visibility kind of plainclothes operations, basically. Then also, I mentioned catalytic converter theft is unfortunately quite a typical crime in terms of vehicles, but we've had a real decrease recently. Since I started, I've helped out at 3 catalytic converter events in Merton, or Wimbledon really. We held one at Waitrose in Raynes Park, we've got one coming up at Waitrose in Raynes Park, date to be confirmed. And then we held one at Queen's Road car park in Wimbledon, and also I helped on one in a different borough. You have to be catalytic converter, well, you have to be trained to be marketing these catalytic converters, but it's a free service that we offer, and I think there's been a 60% decrease in catalytic converter theft since we started this initiative. And likewise in other boroughs, it's something that they offer as well. So that's been a really good initiative that we started. As for burglary, which I mentioned is one of our other priorities in the ward, around 2 months ago we had an uptick in burglaries. Again, I decided to take quite a proactive response on this. We saw about 6, I think, in the space of 3 weeks, and I created a crime map of where they were. And again, went to my Sergeant Ben Hobbs and said, can we do something about this? And again, conducted late night patrols. We decided to do a mixture of high and low visibility patrols. My Sergeant Ben Hobbs was actually riding around on a pedal cycle, dressed in a tracksuit with a radio, trying to be very undercover. And we had 2 of us in cars going around, so obviously he was kind of this low visibility. No one would really be startled if they were to see him. And then we were able to put in stops with vehicles or persons that we believe to be involved in burglaries. So that practice stands. Again, I think we've seen a 55% reduction in burglaries since that happened. Again, it's something that does still happen, unfortunately, and as I said, it is a really high harm crime. But we're always taking practice stance on it, and we'll be conducting reassurance visits. And like I said, the tools for CCTV and things like that. Now I get on to ASB, which is honestly our main priority at the minute and is keeping me very, very busy. So at the minute I'd say that there's 2 main areas for ASB in Raynes Park. Obviously I mentioned that youth violence was our top priority, but in this area it is more of an ASB concern, but it doesn't mean that it's not as much of a priority at all. So
just make sure everyone knows what ASB stands for.
Sorry, antisocial behaviour. So that basically means if someone acts in a manner that's distressing, alarming, or harassment, if it's going to cause that to a victim, then that is what we class as antisocial behaviour. But what comes under that is things like shoplifting, low-level shoplifting, repeating offences. There's a difference really between youth violence and youth ASB, but like I said, nonetheless, it is absolutely our priority at the minute. As I mentioned, the 2 main areas that I'm seeing in youth ASB, and I'm sure you are as residents as well, I'm going to be transparent about it, is we have youth ASB on the High Street, and then we have youth ASB on an estate called the Carter's Estate. I'm dealing with those, I would say, separately. We're creating a portfolio as we speak of individuals that we believe to be involved in these offences. Or sometimes not even offences, but they're acting in a manner that someone would find distressing or alarming, so they need to be dealt with. So as for the High Street, there were about 3 or 4 main shops concerned that were affected by ASB. We had Starbucks, and I worked very closely with a worker from Starbucks. That seems to have died down for the last 6 weeks or so. We've got Co-op, which really is being hit hard, and I'm sure you're aware. I've spoken to residents and councillors alike about Co-op so far. I'll speak a little bit about Co-op whilst we're talking about it. Actually, just yesterday, I organised a meeting with the area manager of Co-op, the operations manager, the manager of the store, and their external security team, Mighty, because we were seeing. Quite frustrating. We were going into the store after each offence has taken place, because the way it works is that I come in on a morning, evening, whatever shift I'm on, and I can read the crime reports that have happened from the days before. So I'm aware of all the crime reports that have been reported, and I would then make a visit to Co-op or whichever shop would be in the matter of the case, and I would try and take that CCTV if it had been recorded of the offence. And aid the officer in charge of the case with getting that CCTV. Again, with it being a repeated shop that is being targeted here, I'm actually in partnership with the manager and the store workers in there quite a lot. And after having spoken to the store workers, I was actually quite alarmed with the vulnerability of the store in itself. After speaking to the workers, there's only ever about 1 or 2 of them working at a time. The layout of the store I know has changed recently. I know that the checkouts used to be closer to the door, now they're the furthest away from the door that could be. And their CCTV system, I believe works, but I have not once received CCTV from them because I get told that they don't know how to work it. Yes, which obviously is absolutely crucial for our evidential progression in investigations. And that's the reason why I asked to host this meeting with them yesterday. So I spoke with the operations manager, who I think manages 25 stores over South West London, and she said that, I will share what she said. She said that as for the store workers, they don't want to put more workers in because they believe, I understand that they don't want to put them in a more vulnerable position. But after having been told directly by a worker there that he feels vulnerable even when there aren't groups of youth in the store, it's a lot to work with. So it's an ongoing process, and it's definitely something that's not at the end of the road yet. But we did come to an agreement with the CCTV, I believe. The way that it works is they have a sort of like panic button that they can press, and it will then directly start recording the CCTV. How CCTV works on our end is we send an electronic link. I'm not sure if some of you will be aware from the parcel thefts, but we send an electronic link that then victims can provide their evidence through that link. So we've now organised that with Co-op, so hopefully that's going to be a process that's a lot easier. But that was incredibly frustrating at the Co-op to have workers saying they don't know how to work it and things like that. So now we've made those progressions, I hope that this can really escalate our investigations. Waitrose is another one of the shops that has been targeted by the youths. Again, I've been in touch with the manager over the past 2 to 3 months, where we've seen these calls increase in Waitrose. They have just had a change of manager, who I believe is aware of the situation, but I haven't spoken to them yet. I'm going to pop in. I popped in the other day, but they weren't in. But they've had a change of manager, so hopefully the meeting that I arranged with Co-op, I'm hoping that that's something I could potentially do with Waitrose as well. Have a meeting with kind of their external security team, even their area manager, something like that, to really tackle the problem that we have. We've been actually doing some high patrols around the area on the high street, because we had also an uptick of robberies, unfortunately, that happened 2 months ago. In which a lone male, quite young male, was targeting even younger children to steal their phones. Again, this was a very high increase, or quick increase should I say, in the space of about 2 weeks. So again, I went to Sergeant Hobbs and said, can we do a planned operation on this to really jump on it? And with this, it was complete high visibility up in the high street, walking up and down, and we also had a couple of other units from a different policing team come and help us. And during the operation, it was actually during after school hours, which is the main kind of hours that these offences take place during. We engaged with individuals, with youths, and challenged them where necessary. We actually led 2 different operations. On one of the operations, 4 youths were stopped and searched. And they were actually the children that were in dealing with the Starbucks offences, and so we were aware of their identities. They've been added to the portfolio, and on the other operation, 3 youths were arrested for shoplifting from a Co-op. Again, their identities are now being added to the portfolio that's increasing, so we kind of have a bit of a grip on who we think might be these individuals committing these offences. As I mentioned, the other area that we're seeing quite a lot of ASB is the Carter's estate, especially Poleston Gardens. I've done a lot of work with the council, especially Clarion, on this, the housing association. I've been in close contact with Clarion. Just yesterday we conducted 3 house visits to individuals that are believed are involved in these youth ASB that's happening on the estate. We did that in partnership with Clarion, because a lot of our work is multi-agency approach to these things. We host a multi-agency meeting with Clarion monthly, and it might now be bi-weekly, to discuss these matters, as it is getting worse. I'm in close contact with a few of the residents there who have either repeat callers or in close contact with the council about these issues and flooring as well, and conduct home visits with them. Whilst we've been patrolling on the estate, we've had results of stop and search of 6 individuals who were smoking cannabis and sitting and chatting in stairwells that are not their own, and that is the crux of it. Obviously the cannabis is a big no, but that's what's really getting to the residents, is it's in the communal stairways of blocks that are not their blocks. So whilst I was doing my patrols on the estate, I noted down the number of doors. I'm not sure if you residents are aware of the estate, but they have these communal doors that are either broken or can be kicked open. They're like a piece of paper, if I'm being honest with you. And after speaking to Karen about this in quite length, we have decided that in September, I believe it's going to be, or October, but hopefully September, all of these doors on the estate are going to be changed to a fob system, which should ensure that children should not be able to gain access into blocks that are not their own. Just another touch on the youth ASB aspect of things. As I mentioned, this portfolio, this is obviously being made using our body-worn cameras, CCTV from shops and people when we can get it. But we're also in close partnership, or I have been in close partnership with the schools officer that covers Raynes Park High School, because he's got a fantastic rapport with the children and can identify them even from what bag they're wearing or the way that they walk or what clothes they wear. So that's really been a key point of contact for us, and something that we hope to continue whilst tackling this problem. Yes, there are more things to say, but I'm aware I've driven on for quite a while, and I am open to questions, and if there's anything that's left on my little notes, I shall cover it at the end as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Jessica, very much. Fascinating.
I'll have a drink as well.
Fascinating presentation. And so much local knowledge. Right, let's start with you.
Just a simple one. You may have noticed at the beginning of this, it's the Raynes Park and West Barnes Community Forum. Could you send through Chris maps of your areas
Of course,
and
yeah.
contact details of the relevant officers? Because I am sure you don't cover where I, as a resident association, right the way up Grand Drive.
Yes.
But it's still Raynes Park.
Sure, no, it's
And all
tricky.
the boundaries have changed. And
They
everything.
have, yeah.
Nobody knows where.
No, so the boundaries have changed.
Yeah.
I'm aware of officers or ward officers that cover the surrounding area, so that's absolutely something I can do. The boundaries have changed, and it's a pain for us as well, because when we want to look for the crime reports for my ward, you have to put in a code, and all the codes have changed. There's now 5 codes that you have to use. It's a bit
So
of a
if you
nightmare.
could send us
Sure.
the individual areas, maybe a map, and then the name of the officers
Sure.
and contact details,
Absolutely, yeah, that's
it
fine.
really will
There
help.
is kind of a map online. So is West Barnes, is that your kind of ward, what it would be? That's something I can do, and I can send through the relevant ward officers for that.
I mean, the boundaries are the ward boundaries
Yeah, the ward boundaries,
as such.
Yes, I believe they are.
They are near enough, yeah, but
No,
the,
they
It
are.
has changed
officers,
recently.
the officers that go round are different in every area. aren't
Yes, because I
they?
believe the apostles, they used to be Dundonald.
That's
and
what
all
used
that
to be
changed.
Dundonald,
Exactly,
yeah.
so that's all changed as of recent, and that's the point actually. I mentioned that I'm now one of the ward officers. Since I started in my job, I have been the only ward officer, but as of Monday we have a second ward officer. So that's really fantastic, and he's actually the old Dundonald ward officer, so he's got
What's his name?
fantastic. Doug Walters.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you have heard of him. So it's me, Doug Walters, and now PCSO James Cushing. So we've got a full team, which hopefully means more patrols and more things that we can do as a full team.
Lady over there.
Thank you. I've been liaising a fair bit with Councillor Willis and dear Chris, who puts up with me. You've covered lots of points, and it's brilliant what you're doing. What will be the ongoing plan to sort of prevent further harassment and, I guess, you know, the youth now riding around with their masks on, balaclavas, and just not making things feel very comfortable?
No,
And
absolutely.
that includes, like, obviously here, but also in Wimbledon.
Yes, yeah. I know that in this portfolio that we've created of the youth that are involved, there's a few individuals that I know are creating similar issues in Wimbledon. So again, I've been liaising with the officers that deal with that ward to talk about individuals But again, as I mentioned, the schools officer, I think that's a link that really should be utilised, and the school itself. I won't necessarily mention which school. Well, I don't want to, but the school itself, we could think about doing a day there, or some sort of school talk, which we have done in the past with the primary school. But if we were to do something with a school that's involved, and I know that some of the individuals that are involved are part of that. Then that's hopefully something we could explore.
But it must be, because there's a few schools obviously in the area that I know have
Sure.
come up
Yes. Yeah.
that are having trouble. And my last point is, you said earlier on about cannabis.
Mhm.
There's a couple that constantly daytime just sit over by the cute little parklet
Mhm.
and just smoke openly. And I've seen families go sit down and they've been put off and
Yeah.
walked away.
If you let me know exactly where it is, we have kind of hotspots that we target. So another one of those is the rec ground. And another one that we've recently added to our list is outside like Deluxe Pizza and Bubbles, like the kind of washing machine, laundrette.
Yeah.
So we've got our hotspots that we go and target, and especially that's a good thing about the shift pattern that we work on. Obviously, we can't be up here 24/7, but if we're on an evening shift, that's really useful for coming up to the hotspots that we target to look at these things. Likewise, if we're on an early shift or a day shift, we can really target after school hours and things like that. So we can kind of cover the clock, and now there's more of us. Hopefully, we can get up to those places more often. But again, if you just remind me at the end exactly where it is, I'll make a note of it and we'll add it to our list.
Another gentleman in the red shirt.
Hi.
Hi.
So recently, and especially now that it's summer and the days are long and nights are short and people are out drinking, having a good time. There's a house, I'm in Gore Road, so it's on the opposite road. But like 2, 3 in the morning, you can still hear them singing, talking loud, making a noise. Who do I contact? Because it's keeping the neighborhood awake.
Okay, so I was going to say also in terms of neighbour disputes, or if that's something that people would like to raise, speak to me individually about it at the end. But just on that note, it's a good point of who to contact. If it's something that's an emergency, obviously please 999. You can report it through 101 or an online service. If it's a repeat occurrence, I believe it would be we'd work in conjunction with the council on that issue. Obviously, it depends if they're in a tenancy agreement, what sort of thing it is. That would be more a council matter. If it's, like I said, this antisocial behaviour, which is a repeated occurrence causing harassment, distress, a lot like alarm, then obviously that does become under a police matter. Saying that, there's a caveat to it that there does have to be a criminal activity involved. It is something that we can obviously still conduct a reassurance visit or a visit to the people that would be deemed suspects in that case.
It's just a lot of noise.
Okay.
You know, people just screaming all of a sudden or singing songs. And I'm fairly high up on Gore Road and they're fairly low down because if I'm not nosy or anything, I look out, I can see down there the lights on. So poor people close by must be driving them insane because it's driving me insane.
Sure. If you were to report it, like please do, and that's something, as I said, we can do. We can visit them and speak about it, because it's been reported to police. If it was that they were renting a flat, they can be issued with things either from us or from the council. So that's something that we can explore. But again, come to me at the end, and I'll make a note of exactly which house is involved, and we can have a look at that.
Come to you in a moment.
Yeah, just quickly, the original Safe Neighbourhoods model, we obviously had 1 sergeant, 2 PCs and 3 PCSOs.
Yeah.
Are you aware if there's any plan to extend it to further PCSOs or
No, so the current model at the minute is that there's 1 sergeant, and then per ward it's 2 PCs and 1 PCSO. We've got a little bit of an issue at the minute in terms of where we are, and I know it's something that obviously I know the old base for the Raynes Park S&T team used to be actually up on the ward. That's something that we'll look at hopefully changing. You know, let's not promise anything, but that's something that we're looking at doing. So within our team at the minute, Sergeant Hobbs covers both Raynes Park, Wimbledon Park and Wimbledon Village. If we were to be moved, I don't know if that's something that they could potentially look at, but as at the minute it's 2 PCs and 1 PCSO, but I'm so happy to hear it because it's been a lot of work with 1 PC and 1 PCSO. and James, bless him, was actually on maternity leave as well. So it's really happy. We're really happy now to have a full team. But if it expands, then potentially if we move up here, that could be something that happens.
Okay, and roughly how many days are you spending within? I mean, I know there'll probably be abstractions, etc. But I was wondering how many days per month you would estimate are actually on the wall.
As of recent, we've been abstracted a lot, which again is a bit of a meta issue. And I know that Sergeant Hobbs is very keen, and there's actually an initiative at the minute of really improving safe and neighbourhood policing, because I believe it's such a fundamental part of policing is knowing the community. And I think they are trying to change that, but with the King's coronation, with a lot of football aid, obviously when those central officers get abstracted onto this aid, we are then to fill the positions on the response team. So as well as working in my ward, I am working on the response team quite a lot, which then obviously abstracts me from my ward work. But for the minute, I would say if I'm working 6 days a week, 5, I'll be up in the ward and I'll be focusing on ward things. I'd say I'll probably get 3 or 4 abstractions a month, but hopefully that's going to decrease.
Just to be clear, an abstraction is where you're taken away to do something else.
Yes, exactly. So aid is it's when officers are either level 3, level 2 or level 1 trained for different things. And things like Wimbledon, that will require obviously a lot of officers, the King's coronation, a lot of officers, things like that. So that's what we consider to be aid, when a lot of officers will be taken and put in central London to be working on these events. And yes, as I said, just if a lot of officers are going central, there's obviously then a lot of spaces, as it were, from the Wimbledon response team that then SMT will have to fill. But that's something that I think they're hoping to rejig a little bit over the map itself. We'll see. No promises.
On the co-op,
Mhm.
what the co-op's giving the message to those young people is come in and steal as much as you like. I mean, I think it's absolutely deplorable what that security officer said. They have a responsibility to their staff. They should not be leaving 2 staff on their shoulder. They should have proper security and proper staffing. If that was the co-op head office and you were walking in and frightening people, do you think she'd talk like that? No, she wouldn't. It's an absolute disgraceful management that they're all right in their nice cosy head offices and their cars, but the staff on the shop floor, and of course what happens is all that theft is loaded onto our bills. That happens anyway, you can't stop shoplifting, but for her to respond like that, and the staff are scared, and their employer is saying, well, there's nothing we can do, you're on your own, is a disgrace for an organisation like the co-op in particular.
Exactly,
I
absolutely.
think that's dreadful.
And it has repercussions, on the staff, the workers, the residents, us as well. I know, obviously, with it being a repeated offence, and this has especially happened at Waitrose, unfortunately, we will get people reporting it, but then we'll say we don't want to progress this investigation, or they don't report it. And I know my colleague, my PCSO James Cushing, he has been in Raynes for 15 years, and I know he's previously spoken to co-op about these issues. I think it was the store manager suggested, even for a part-time, we looked, and I think there was about 13 calls in the last 2 months to co-op, and we looked at what time they would be calling up, and he suggested for the second time part-time security personnel on the door, and they've refused it for the minute.
Of course there's 13, because the message they get every time they go in is, we can do what we like. It's the old broken window syndrome that they discovered in New York. If you leave a broken window,
Exactly,
it's a very powerful message that nobody cares.
It
It's an
seems to me
absolute
that also
disgrace.
that shop is designed for crime, isn't it?
That's exactly what I was saying. The shop itself is vulnerable, and with them changing where the checkouts are and things like that, but they've said we're going to work collaboratively on it, and I hope that they can pull their weight as much as we can. So let's hope to see.
It shouldn't be left to you to tell them to, act responsibly to their staff and to the community.
Well, I think we're getting near the end of our time with you now.
Very quick.
Matthew,
Yes, 2 comments and a question. Which is, that's the spot right there that Marion was talking about, so you can see it right next to the mural, so you don't need to go far, there is no social behaviour.
Okay.
And great, you can see it. But thank you so much, because the main things we're contacted about are crimes and co-op, Carter's estate, and you'll know after the incident on the 29th of March that there was a lot of back and forth about things like CCTV on the estate. we were promised those doors last year by Clarion and we couldn't get a date out of them. So if you're being told September, you're doing an amazing job. And yeah, I just wanted to say, if we are going to be talking about ASB and CCTV and stuff at the police board panel, I mainly just wanted to ask whether you were wanting more members in the police board panel because you've got so many interested parties here.
Yeah.
And that's something they can
I was absolutely going to mention that. Thank you. The wall panel, a bit short notice, but the second wall panel of the year is going to be taking place on Friday at the Salvation Army Church in Raynes Park. We are always looking for new members of this panel, and that's another thing that I'm really proud of since I've started in the role is I noted that obviously a huge part of Raynes Park is the Korean Community Centre and the Korean church that is in Raynes Park in the ward. And I went over there a couple of weeks ago and I introduced myself, and I have got the leader of the church to hopefully come along to the meetings, and that's something I really wanted to do is kind of show how diverse our ward really is and have someone representing that part of our community on the panel. He's not confirmed if he can make it on Friday, but he said he would like to in the future, and we might even kind of host a collaborative event with him at the church. If you are interested, sorry, do come and speak to me again.
The Met doesn't always get a great press, but I think you've been very impressive this evening. I think everyone would like to show their appreciation. Next item is an update from local councillors. So Matthew and Victoria, each of you.
I think one of the other issues we've been contacted a lot about recently is fly tipping. We've had on the high street one particular doorway. Sorry. So one of the issues we've contacted about recently is fly tipping. We noticed on the high street there's been a doorway that's been targeted a few times. So we're just in regular contact with officers about that. But please, one thing we've also noticed recently, but we know has been happening historically as well, is when you report through Fix My Street. So I don't know if everyone's aware of that, but Fix My Street is an online tool where you can report instances of fly tipping, gullies that are blocked, and various other kind of street issues. And you can report it through there, and then you'll get a number and you'll get an update when it's been fixed. And we've heard from residents that there are instances where things haven't been fixed, but it's been said it has been. So if that happens, please do let us know, because we can then report those back. And that happened with this doorway on the high street, and also with a sink that was dumped on the footpath down to the Wimbledon. So please do just let us know if that happens, because obviously the system doesn't work if people give up on it. It is largely effective, but sometimes it isn't, and we just need to know the rate of that. On the litter front, I guess also to say that we're going to be actually doing a litter pick this Saturday at 1 PM, meeting outside the Bridge Cafe. So if anyone fancies joining us, we did our last one at Christmas and -2 degrees, so this Saturday will be a bit warmer. So please do join. I think I will leave flooding to you. Yeah.
Yes, that Bridge Cafe is just behind Waitrose on West Barnes Lane, because we're going to be tackling carters, because there's people who have got in contact with us about bits of land like embankments that just never get cleaned by anyone because no one knows who owns them. So we have asked the council to come together with a log of land in the borough that is not yet registered to certain people, and then we can know who to contact in those circumstances. We've asked for an update on step-free access at Raynes Park. The funding application's gone in. We're expecting to not hear until the autumn whether that's been successful or not. On flooding, obviously there was a recent flood event that was quite substantial in Raynes Park on a Monday. We all went down. By the time we got there, it had gone away, which is a good sign. Thames Water is in the press for the wrong reasons today, but Thames Water is working with the council and the Environment Agency for a long-term flood solution for Raynes Parks, some of which has already started, and you can see that by the fact that water did drain. And yes, basically, we have started cleaning up areas like behind Savannah, which is a bit of a trouble spot for people going and urinating and leaving sorts of stuff behind. So the embankment group that are currently doing opposite Boots have included that garden area in their sort of clean-up zone, and they're going to be planting a garden there. And if you'd like to get involved, come see us at the end and give you the details. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just asking, I remember I think it was last year we discussed about the access road along to the industrial estate and parking along there, which...
I'll say something like that in a minute.
No problem.
That's all right.
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay, I just thought, just in case you thought I wasn't doing anything, I'll just tell you a few of the things that I've been dealing with recently. People with council tax issues, for example, if a house is empty because the person in it has become unwell, for example, dementia or whatever, then you don't have to pay the premium that you would normally have to pay for an empty house. And we're sorting that out for some people. Issues also with Fix My Street. Again, it's quite a common thing where they tell you it's fixed and then you go and have a look and it's still there. And quite a lot of fly tipping issues as well. A neighbour antisocial behaviour issue where someone's being harassed by their neighbour. Inspections of housing estates. Helping someone who's in the wrong place on the housing waiting list, got the wrong priority. Step-free access works at Motspur Park Station. Restoration of a bollard of a width restriction in Crossbay. I don't know if any of you ever go that way, but that bollard has been missing for years. Eventually, after having been told it had been done, when it hadn't been done, but the resident tells me it was done yesterday. Modifications of houses for disabled people. Sometimes someone from occupational therapy is supposed to come around and find out what's needed and recommend and in many cases fund improvements, but that can take a long time and sometimes it needs us to nudge the system to make it happen. And the worst thing, which we'll come to in planning, is the refusal of the Secretary of State to call in the planning decision for Meadowview Road playing fields where Bellway managed to secure permission to build 170 dwellings. So that's what I've been doing. Next part, 5 and 6 will combine. Chris is going to present on the various Raynes Park projects. Chris Love.
Yeah, and Tony's here now, so we'll probably say something on the flooding and also the sign opposite Waitrose. I just want to say a few things about the railway. A number of times for the last 20 years that I've stood here going through a list of things and bemoaning the railways not coming up with the goods that they promised. It looks at last as if things are happening. And you've seen the pieces of land, haven't you, by the station entrance, and also the other one at the other side of the Skew Arch. They started this work, as you know, a year ago. They were going to finish it July of last year. And then there were all sorts of legal wranglings, and they were eventually sorted. And then we all thought the other day, it's happening. And they discovered an electricity cable somewhere, and that's put stop to things. But it sounds as if, I keep saying this, and they keep saying it, in a few weeks' time it'll be sorted. It will be great, it will be sorted. The other bit, you will have seen the embankment on the north side. Liz Lane and her volunteers have done an absolutely fabulous job there. And they've cleared stacks and stacks of, and Mike here, Michael's done, he's there every week and you do a huge amount of work. My role is simply to go to the dump with the remains, and huge amounts I've taken. It's now a sort of blank canvas. There are a few plants there that have survived, and Liz and others are doing some work to try and plan out the best type of plants to put there, because it's not the easiest of surfaces, because it's shaded and there's not a lot of water, and you can't sort of keep carrying watering cans up with water. So a lot of thought's going to go into that. This isn't the right time of the year to plant, so not a lot's going to happen now, but at least they've got it cleared, they'll keep it clear, and we've got the key so we can get on there at last and do what we need to do. So well done to Liz and Michael and any other volunteers who have helped. You've done a fabulous job.
Indeed.
The Kiss and Ride, yes, somebody asked about that. The area on this side of the railway, which is meant to be a place to drop people off. Stephen Hammond, our MP, has been liaising with Workspace, who rent the land from Network Rail, and they've been very slow in coming forward. Matthew, you did some work with them a year ago as well, didn't you? And I've been working with them even before that. it looks as if they are now soon going to get a company in to manage the parking there, which will be great, not just because people will be able to pick up and drop off, but it'll manage the area better, because there's a lot of fly tipping that happens there, and the place is just not looked after, and it's not council property, so we can't blame the council for this. It's Network Rail property. So that, I'm hoping, will happen soon. And then the other day, Friday, I had a meeting with Stephen Hammond and senior managers from Network Rail and South West Trains to look at the front of the station. And again, this is something we've talked about for decades, because if you come to the station from the other side and you look up, it's a mess, isn't it? And that area in front of the station is the one sort of community area in Raynes Park. There aren't community areas in Raynes Park. And it's where everybody crosses through and passes through. And the council have done a lot of work improving Raynes Park, but the railways have done very little, and they made promises, etc., etc. And you know, and their first remark to us was, "Well, Chris, it's going to take £250,000 to do what you want to do." And we said, "Look, hang on a minute. We don't anticipate you'll do everything we ask, but it's not going to cost a lot of money to do some basic stuff." Now, if you look at Earlsfield Station in front, it's got a big sign saying Earlsfield Station. We're saying, look, if you had a sign at the front there covering that grotty archway saying Raynes Park Station, it'll look great. It would cover a multitude of sins. And there's an awful lot of other small things that they could and should do. And they've promised so many times that they'll remove that wooden fencing on platform 1. But that hasn't been done, and their excuse is, well, we don't, you know, we need to get possession of the track, that's very difficult. But last weekend, that line was closed. So what we're saying to them is, get the damn fencing, put it in that shed down below, and then when you get the line closed, run up and put it up there, mate. So, yeah, and we've already mentioned step-free access, and it was quite interesting. We were discussing that, and you're aware that Motspur Park Station is getting step-free access now, and it's about to be built. And we in Raynes Park say, look, there's a lot more passengers at Raynes Park. I'm not trying to sort of
Don't worry, it's started. Stop it now.
but there's a lot more passengers at Raynes Park. So come on, you guys. And the reason it hasn't happened at Raynes Park is that it's been very difficult to work out how to get a lift shaft up on platforms 3 and 4. Every which way didn't seem to work. And then there was the crossrail bit that put it back. And you will have heard the plan now is to have all access via platforms 1 and 2. And I know in this forum people have talked about it before, I've never understood it, but the guy from Railways took us round and showed us. And if I'll try and explain it to you again, basically, near the booking office or just beyond it, there will be a lift shaft that will go up to platform 2, and then it'll go up again to the next floor with a new bridge across, keeping the old bridge, and then there'll be another lift down to platform 3 and 4, if that makes sense. So all of the access, level access, will be from the north side of the station. Interestingly, they reckon it'll cost £10 million now. We all sit here and these figures, but that is the amount that Motspur Park got. So it's within the framework of the possible. And as Matthew, I think it was you that said it, it is now on the list. So Stephen Hammond is going to try and knock a few higher people up in Network Rail to push the plea. So that's where that one's at. I think that's it from me. But I'm slightly excited that there's a possibility that things are gradually happening, but it is damn damn slow.
Stay there in case there are any questions.
I would add that it's my aim that when we get that south side triangle done,
Yes.
we're going to crack a bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
So if you see a bunch of people, hopefully the police won't stop us, to celebrate this happening.
Yeah.
I mean to drink it, not to smash it against the wall.
The issue of the rough sleeping at Raynes Park Station, sort of, I don't want to victimise the guy, but obviously there's big struggles. He comes and goes and comes and goes.
Yeah, I mean, others talk about that. I know, yeah.
So the individual.
Come and stand.
Sure. That was on my other list. So I'm glad someone's brought it up. So the issue of rough sleeping is quite a convoluted process because there's very split decisions on that issue. It's now been decided by the council and us that we're going to take an active approach to it. And the individual you mentioned has been issued with a CPW, which is a community protection warning. This at first is kind of a written warning with a list of conditions on it. If these are breached, it then is kind of upgraded to a CPN, which is Community Protection Notice. With, again, you can either change the conditions or keep the same conditions, and this time, if those conditions are breached, it is an arrestable offence. He's been issued with CPW. I have a recurring meeting with the navigator of rough sleeping and the council to reassess the position that he's in, he does have a property, but getting him rehomed potentially somewhere else. But we are currently collecting evidence of him breaching the CPW, and then he will be issued with a CPN. It is, again, another thing that we are working on at the minute. But really to get to the root cause, it's not just going to be a police, but we are taking a proactive stance
I
on
was just going to say about the guy there, because isn't it a real clear mental health issue that, you know, I know he's been housed, he's, you know, back and back, but I suppose the notice is, will they ever really solve the real root problem to him?
Exactly, and that's kind of why we try and hold these collaborative meetings, because with some individuals' tenancy agreements that are given these housing situations, they are to engage with, I believe they've changed their name, but it's Westminster Drug Project, or likewise services, and that's something that we try and approach in these meetings. So that's exactly why we haven't been down the active approach, because it's quite an individual situation for someone to be in, and it's not just all about enforcement, but that's something that I do hope to continue with that project and with other people from the council.
Just very quickly, obviously that's the enforcement side. The cabinet member, not the cabinet member, the executive director of adult social care for the council is aware of that individual and the leader of the council, and there's been emails back and forth between all of us about that person, so that side of it is also being looked at.
Good. Where are we now? Chris, planning update.
Flooding and Tony, you anything on show updates? Okay.
Planning updates, it's you.
I mean, yeah, but there's we haven't finished the thing.
Oh, have you got more? Oh, right. Oh. Tony, would you like to come to the front and say your bit?
Probably a money bit.
No, it's just if there's any update on the
Holiday on Monday and
flooding.
an extraordinary general meeting on Tuesday, and here I am in Henley. What would you on
Only if
flooding?
you've anything to add to what Chris has
Well,
said.
only to say the timetabling, as we understand it, is that we've had our fourth flood in about 6 years, and obviously a lot of parties are aware of the problems. And there is meant to be a study that was commenced in January. It's a multi-party one because this needs to have a lot of people involved in it. The best news was that Network Rail isn't going to do anything but just give money. So let's take one obstacle out of the way. So we've got to make forward progress on that. But one of the things discussions have been taking place on is just the logistics of it. I mean, looking at what the chaos was when BT put a trench across the high street in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You imagine that multiplied by 100 if you wanted to sink a big tank somewhere into Raynes Park and this sort of thing as well. So just doing it is easier to say, but looking at the implications and the road diversions and everything else that will be required as well makes it a very big subject. So it's not on the immediate process of implementation at the moment, but the agencies that are putting it together will hopefully get this Arcadis report. This is independent consultants, which will then recommend what is a methodology of actually achieving this as well. And one of the big ideas is probably going to be some big tank somewhere that absorbs the water and it doesn't end up under the railway bridge. There are logistic problems, of course, because we're down at the bottom of the valley. So anything that spills over from rainfall, surface water, comes straight down into the bottom. And that requires also essential gully cleaning as well. So the council has to work with Thames Water, etc. So we're waiting to see what this report says. We may end up with things like rain gardens as well. And we said, well, that's good. We want to have, you can have the pain, we want to have a gain. And we may get some better public realm out of it as well, because we think one that we don't want to see is all of this upheaval, and then what we're left with is a very unpleasant looking solution at the end of it, because some of this goes underground, but all the mess is going to be left above ground for us. So our fingers are crossed. It's supposed to have been completed this month. I'm not sure exactly, sometimes these programs get extended, but I imagine the council will see the report quite soon. I see Matthew has seen it already, maybe.
I just want to add something about time. I can just say the cabinet approved 300 grand for the project 9 days ago.
Right.
So 50 grand is between 24-25 and 250 grand is the year 25 to 26.
Right.
So that includes public realm creation, gyratory removal, and new public space as well. So that project will have match funding from the EA and TfL.
Right. Yes, TfL is another agency that's got to be put in it as well. If we decide to change some of the routing of the roads, that's another implication of where the buses stop, etc. So you say these things quite quickly and it sounds like it's very feasible, and then you look at it and it finds it's much more difficult than you might have thought, including some of the services that are underground. If you want to actually change some of the road system, all that spaghetti that's underground has to be sorted out as well. So our fingers are crossed. It's a problem that's well appreciated, and the shopkeepers must be getting a bit fed up when they're paying rates to be in a high street and 40% of trade is disappearing now online, and then you find you're going to get flooded as well, and car parking prices may go up and everything. So it's a complex situation of trying to get the high street to be vital as well, which is an overarching thing. That these are kind of problems, but we'd like to see a better high street and a better public realm once it's all been put into place. So that's we'll keep you informed as and when there's something to say. I think we all agree there's no point in speculating on things and giving you things at a meeting which aren't true, and then you might get this thing called consultation fatigue. So would you please only talk to us when you've got a proposal you know you can deliver. Don't keep telling us what might be, and then hopes are raised and nothing happens, etc. So there will be obviously a gap between what you hear and what can be delivered, and hopefully all councillors let us know as soon as they're in the picture. Okay, thank you.
Any questions for you before you go?
Could I just ask, is that a rain garden at the north end of Skew Arch?
Yes.
They were putting a big tank in there. Is that a flood alleviation idea?
They put that in pretty quickly. There was some money left over as a rain garden, and the idea is the water runs as well down the gullies and runs into it, and then ultimately it accepts a level of water. It's not a very big rain garden, and it would be better if we didn't have impervious rocks in it and had trees that actually took the water out of the ground. But this is a trial area, and we can obviously try to improve on things as we get the hang of it and the scale of it as well. I mean, it's slightly frustrating that the money was there and there was a keenness to try to achieve this, but that was 4 months before the report conclusions would come. So in a way, the cart was before the horse. So hopefully we'll find how we can do rain gardens. Some people said we could have Durham Road, etc. But on a slope, you need to effectively have a level area for the water. So it means stepping down to hold the water. So as it spills over this one, it drops into this one, etc., etc. So there's a civil engineering and a landscape way of approaching it as well. So we need a comprehensive solution. So that the trial one was good to see it put in there and give it a chance to get established. But something like that may occur also at the end of Skew Arch, where we've long asked for a better, bigger public realm there. It may be possible to actually put something in there that would absorb some of the water as well. So we're speculating on what this report's going to say. But that's one of those instances where it isn't always a ground. It could be something quite pleasant above ground where the water goes into it, and we get something of a better landscape and public realm as well as an engineering solution. So we're trying to say no pain, no gain. We're going to sort this out.
And do you have any information why they have to keep repairing the water mains in Durham Road? They repair them and then they come back, and then they repair them and they come back. And do you know what's the problem is?
No,
It's resolved now,
I'm
isn't
afraid
it?
I don't.
Well, there
Well,
was a
they've dug a
traffic light
trench again at the
today.
end
Yes.
of Durham Road.
Yeah, they're digging that up yet again.
Yeah.
I don't know, obviously, some of it is probably the age of our water infrastructure, as we know. Thames Water Chief Executive resigned today, I think, or was it
Yeah.
yesterday, and isn't taking her bonus, and maybe that'll be put towards it. But I think, you know, we don't know, we have very old infrastructure, and Thames Water, obviously, there's always a complaint that not enough is being done to upgrade things, and too much is now being paid to shareholders and dividends, and not enough to actually repair things. But that's a big political balance that has to be debated. So this is the local effect of probably underfunding in past centuries almost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
You
much.
haven't got any update on the sign opposite Waitrose there, the old.
No, I mean, we did ask Paul McGarry to follow that up,
Right.
that one there,
Through the
because,
enforcement.
yes, the enforcement.
It's
Only
really
because
enforcement.
we got rid of about 13 hoardings before with enforcement notices, and those two big hoardings are sitting on a boundary, which we said, we're not too sure whose land it is. It's difficult when you stick something right on the boundary. If you remember, the hoardings that used to be along towards the station belonged to Network Rail, but were sitting in the public pavement. So we're never quite sure where the money went from the advertising revenue in that as well. But anyway, the hoardings went, that problem went. We got two leftovers, and one of them doesn't appear to have any support left in it at all. No one's using it for anything. So we hope that using planning powers of enforcement, we can actually get it removed once we can be quite clear who we've got to send the notice to, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think you're so lucky in Raynes Park to have people who put so much effort into
Yeah.
improving the environment for everybody. I think it's just wonderful. So Tony and Chris, thank you very much. Oh, you as well, of course.
I'm just the chairman. But there are other members who
Yeah,
get
I
involved.
mean, everybody who's involved. People who spend their time trying to make things better for everybody, not just for themselves. It's amazing. Chris, your turn.
It's not a lot, some updates from when we last met. So, Wimbledon Chase Station, that application was approved by the Planning Application Committee on the 26th of April, which was just after we met. Officers are currently working on the legal agreement before issuing the decision. So there's always a period of negotiation after the committee when stuff gets decided at that point. So that's where it is at the moment. So there won't be any activity anytime soon until that's resolved. Manu plastic sites, which we seem to have been discussing since before the dawn of time. The latest application is under consideration by officers, so we're not sure when that will go to committee or go to decision yet. It's in that process at the moment. The Aviva application for the Pets at Home site on Bushy Road, that's also under assessment. That's not been done that long, I don't think. So again, I'll keep you updated if we hear when that's coming to a decision. And the only other thing I had was John's already mentioned about the Leicester site, which was approved by the committee last September, and the Secretary of State's just written to say they're not going to call in that application. So that's back in that phase now where officers work on the final legal decision and things like Section 106 agreements and that sort of stuff before issuing the final approval to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I should say that the Residents Association has some ideas for how this scheme might still be challenged, but I think that's a bit of a long shot, but they haven't given up yet. We come to any other business.
What do you want to pick up about this meeting and its future?
Yeah, that's one. So
Shall I
take
do that?
it
Yeah.
away.
So for those who are at the meeting in April, I talked about the plans for reformatting these forum meetings in the future. That's going for a formal decision at Cabinet in a couple of weeks' time. And we discussed what sort of frequency you'd like to continue with meetings locally. And I've had the same conversation in Wimbledon and other parts of the borough. So the next meeting is down on the diary for, I think it's the 19th, is it?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's Tuesday, 19th September. So that will be your first solo meeting, as it were, continuing this format or whatever format you want to do, but I won't be here for that. But we'll still book this room for you. It is booked already. And it'll be down to councillors and the Raynes Park Association to sort of manage that meeting. Once we've got the decision from Cabinet, then we'll start setting up the other events, the question time events we want to do, and citizen assembly events we want to do, and start getting dates planned for the rest of the year. So I think the moment the plan is to hold 2 meetings in this format to supplement what we're going to be doing centrally. But you can change that at any point. So 2 meetings not enough.
The other meetings are central.
Well, they'll be localised and we'll have to look for different venues depending on what we're doing. So it won't necessarily be here because we're, particularly for the question time thing, we want to have a bigger audience.
Right. So sorry, just to get this clear. So
Yeah.
you're suggesting that we can have a couple of meetings a year on this sort of basis.
Yeah.
If
We can have
There's
many
one
to-
You have as many as you
official one.
like.
There's only one official one. The September one is one that's going to be organised by the Raynes Park Association and the councillors.
but what about the others in the year?
I think I'd be right in saying, wouldn't I, that we collectively can organise as many meetings
Yeah,
as
as
we
we want.
but the council will be organising 2.
So we'll the finer detail we'll organise and get to. But certainly there'll be a question time for that meeting somewhere, but we need to find a venue that will fit
Well,
with
you
that.
talk about question times. I'm just getting confused.
So we're replacing the forums across the piece
Right.
with question time formats and citizen assembly type formats.
And this is across the borough.
Yes.
But locally.
But locally, if those areas want
Lots
to
of
carry on
different
doing meetings in this format, they are welcome to do so.
What, so if we decided we wanted this format, we wouldn't then have the question.
No, you still have those.
You get
Well-
you get the question time thing, whether you want it or not, and they'll set it up. Meanwhile,
Okay.
you can supplement that with whatever other meetings we wish to continue to organise on our own.
So Wimbledon and Raynes Park are going to supplement those meetings with their own meetings. The other 3 areas are not planning to do that.
So very well
Any-
attended.
Any thoughts about that?
So the other areas are not going to supplement it with the community forums we've had it.
Well, I
Not
think
the
the
problem in this
problem,
format.
the problem as I understand it is that in other areas, community forums are not very successful. But they're very successful here by comparison. And so that's where you might think there isn't really a problem here. What problem is being solved? And I would agree with you. But for many areas of Merton, you might have 2 or 3, half a dozen people turn up, and it's a bit of a non-event. And so they've decided to try new formats.
Okay.
And then I also went through last time the other plans we have in terms of engaging better with resident associations, and quite a few representatives here tonight.
And looking at other ways.
And looking at other things, and then also digital approaches. There'll be a whole plethora of things, but the format for these meetings hasn't changed for some time. We're going to try some new things and see if we can get a bit more engagement as a result.
But there was an agreement at the last meeting that residents wanted to carry on doing it like
Yeah.
this for at least 1 or 2 meetings. So
And there's nothing to stop us doing that as frequently as we
Well-
like. The question time format would be cabinet members, would it not, and people would submit, or would they just put their hands up and ask questions? How would
So
that work?
again, the detail was yet to be defined. I'm hoping it's not just cabinet members. I think it will also look to include the police and NHS and others, so that we can cover a whole range of issues at those sessions.
it's on the agenda for next week.
Yeah, Chris has just said that the Raynes Park Association with our councillors will look at it in more detail and come back to people, if that makes sense. Because as you can pick up tonight, it's quite a difficult thing for us to grapple with.
Just assume that September meeting is happening.
September meeting
Yeah.
is, yes, in the
And here,
existing
yeah.
format.
Just about.
Yes.
Well, we'll put a kind of replica.
I'll be like Abba, I can do it in hologram form.
Anything else anybody else wants to raise before we close the meeting? Oh,
Thing
amazing.
again, yes. Councillor Matthew and Chris mentioned there's some talk of reorganising the gyratory system in Raynes Park. Did I get that right?
Sounds like
What
a
does that
small
mean?
issue.
It's a small issue, but it's bundled up with all of this. So what has been mooted and proposed by various people, and it is again pie in the sky stuff for now until the money comes through, is the idea that you would have a big attenuation basin for water somewhere under, sort of in front of Raynes Park Tavern, the Raynes Park, whatever it's called now, and then you wouldn't be able to drive through that bit between the Raynes Park Health Centre and the tavern and Boots. That would become a pedestrian area to have a civic square where you can have your Christmas tree or whatever. It would then involve turning the area that is currently one way back into two-way, which would redo the junction of Peeps and Warple to have people going left and right, whatever. The bit of lower Warple in front of Sainsbury's, etc., would just be local traffic and parking for that.
Okay.
So that would be the idea, and that would include things like rain gardens and different paths and cycle paths and all that being fixed, because there's a big problem with the crossing underneath the Raynes Park Bridge at the moment, and those types of things are all working together. The idea that you will be able to get cyclists and pedestrians across in time, and with funding from multiple places to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't catch that, I think it's a major change, isn't it? That the one-way system would cease to be a one-way system effectively, and part of it, the bit in front of the health centre, would become a pedestrianised, which is quite an interesting idea, isn't it?
It's being proposed. I mean, there are all sorts of things that need to be checked. So, for example, can you turn an articulated lorry left or right at this bridge? So those things are still being looked at. So nothing's a done deal. But yeah, you would go under this bridge here, and instead of everyone going left and then having the silly box junction as well, which people hate, you would be able to go left or right. So it would fix 2 or 3 major issues.
When's that likely to go out for consultation?
So-
How old are you?
Yeah.
Councillor,
I don't know how it'll be in my lifetime, but.
Well, the funding has been allocated for between 2024 and 2026, and one would assume since there's 50 grand the year before the 250 grand, the 50 grand would be for things like
The consultation.
those sums sound like they pay for consultants, not for work.
correct,
Yes.
but that again is match funding with many other places, and the idea of it is that you wouldn't have to really change the road to just mark it the opposite direction, because it's using line marking anyway.
5-6 years, I think is minimum.
Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Any more before we? Okay, meeting closed. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you. Sharing.
When did you hear it a lot? Yeah, but you know what that is, the house at the end. That's the house on our side of the road, you're on the same side as me. Yeah, that is the house that is in between us, I'm sure.